This is Miss Mason Explains the Birth of Psychology. All right. So, before scientific psychology, all right, we're talking about psychology's roots. We're talking about Socrates, Aristotle, Plato, Locke. All right. We, the world was so fascinated with the idea of, is the mind connected to the body, or are they two separate things, or do we have these ideas in our head already when we're born, or is our mind really a blank slate that's filled by experiences and what we've learned from those experiences? And this has been a huge debate. All right. So in your reading, you guys read about Aristotle and Socrates. And Aristotle, he believed that the mind and the body are connected, that they create one thing. But then Socrates and Plato, they said, no, 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 the mind and the body are two totally different things. Okay? And because they think two different things, they think, oh, these ideas that we have in our head, some of them are inborn. They're in our bodies already. They're in our minds already when we are born. But Aristotle and Locke, who believe that the mind and the body are connected, they believe that the mind is a blank slate. Blank slate. So that's what you need to remember about the pre-scientific psychology. All right. Now, in this class, we are going to be talking a lot about modern psychology. But before we do, we have to talk about Aristotle. Now, Aristotle, he was asked constantly to understand the relationship between the body and the psyche. His way of answering all of these questions from all these philosophers and from the politicians was that you need to observe and then make guesses based on those observations. What do you think those guesses are? Hypotheses. Okay, so you have to observe and then you have to make a hypothesis, a theory. Okay, now there was a lot that happened between Aristotle, the 4th century BCE, and William Wundt in the 1830s. Now, yes, that's about 2,000 years between the two. There was a lot of ideas between, what is behavior and mind, and are they connected, and what causes us to behave this way, and what causes people to have, the disorders, the mental disorders that we will be talking about. But just remember that in this class, we're going to be mostly concerned with the psychological thinkers and ideas of the last 2 centuries, Now, William Wundt, all right, William Wundt, he opened up the first psychology laboratory at the University of Leipzig in Germany. This was in 1879. He really wanted to figure out can I make psychology into a science? So he created in an experiment. And in this experiment, he carefully measured observations, trying to figure out what are the atoms of the mind, the basic human mental processes. Now, with these experiments, he was referring to a controlled activity that allows the psychologist to study one atom, one mental process very well. So here is the first psychology experiment. All right. During this experiment, Wundt wanted to try to figure out how much time did it take for people to push a button. Okay. So the first group pushed a button when a ball was dropped. This is based on when they heard the ball hitting the platform. It took a typical person about 1/10 of a second to hit the bell. The other group, his experimental group, pushed a button when they were consciously aware of the ball hitting the platform. Now, this is interesting. It took 2/10 of a second. Interesting. Interesting. So, why do you think this is? Why did it take a little bit longer to consciously form the idea that a sound has been heard? Okay. All right. So, why were the time different? Okay. So this brings in Edward Titchinger's, I know that's a weird name, structuralism. Okay. So Titchinger, he was a student of William Wundt, and yes, like William Wundt, he relied on self-report data. Now, the problem with the self-reporting data is that these subjects of their experiments were engaging in introspection. All right, they're reporting on their sensations and other elements of their own experiment. So, for instance, look at this picture with this little girl. She is smelling some of these flowers. Now, I can smell the flowers and say, oh, these flowers smell so good. And then, you could be smelling these flowers and you'd be like, yo, Miss Mason, those smell like doo doo. They really stink. All right. Again, introspection. It's reporting on your own sensations, your own reactions to stimuli of smelling and feeling. Oh, this fabric feels so soft. And then I feel the fabric and I'm like, yo, it is scratchy and I'm never going to wear it. Okay, because it's introspection. We all come up with our own opinion based on our reaction to the sensation of whatever it is. Okay, now he tried to use these introspective reports to build a view of the mind structure, and this is called structuralism. However, this is a negative, all right, of structuralism is that it's built on unreliable data. What you think is totally different from what I think. And so, again, you can't really build the whole mind from these introspective reports because, again, that's only building my mind. That's not building your mind. We all have a different experience to different sensations. All right. Now we have some other psychological pioneers. We have William James here. He developed functionalism, and he studied human thoughts and feelings by asking, what function does happiness serve? How might happiness helped our ancestors involved? Okay. Now, it's closely related to evolutionary thinking, but it is not evolutionary. Okay, he's thinking of what function might all of these human thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Okay, William James wrote the first textbook. All right, the first principles of psychology, and actually, this was written in 1890, and it is still being used today. He mentored another pioneer, Mary Whiton Calkins. All right. She was a memory researcher and the first female president of the APA. Does anyone know what the APA stands for? The American Psychological Association. All right. Calkins studied with William James. She was denied an Harvey PhD because why? Why do you think she was denied a PhD from Harvard? Boom, because she was a woman. All right. So she declined a degree that was offered by Radcliffe College, which was a female school. And she taught at Wellesley College from 1891 to 1929, right before her death. All right, so that's Mary Whiton Calkins. Another one of our psychological pioneers is Margaret Floyd Washburn. All right. She did earn her PhD. She was the second female APA president, and she wrote The Animal Mind. All right. She also studied with Edward Titchinger, but she was barred from his Experimental Psychological Association. Does anyone know why? Again, because of her gender. All right, so now we move into behavioralism. With behavioralism, we have John B. Watson. He was the famous Little Albert experiment. All right, he paired a bunny with a loud noise and taught a baby, Little Albert, to fear rabbits. All right, this is called classical conditioning, something that we will talk about later in this class. We have BF Skinner. Skinner used operant conditioning to teach pigeons to do amazing things to get rewards. Some of these things would be to hit this little button and he, believe it or not, pigeons were actually taught how to uh, what is it? Like a GPS for missiles. They acted as GPS for missiles. But we will talk about both Watson and Skinner in chapter 7 of learning. All right, so that will come in a few units. All right, so now we have my man Freud. All right, so Freud, he's with the psychoanalytic psychology. All right, and he is the founder of psychoanalysis. He studied and wanted to really help people that suffered from mental disorders. So he had a school of study and treatment focused on the role of unconscious drives, wishes, and needs that emphasized the importance of childhood experiences. So he wanted to figure out what caused these people to have mental disorders. Was it because of their unconscious drives, their unconscious wishes, their unconscious needs? And what happened during their childhood experiences that caused them to have these mental disorders? All right, so that's Sigmund Freud. Now we have Abraham Maslow and Carl Rogers. Both of these gentlemen are our humanists, okay? Now, we will talk about these more in the study of personality and for psychotherapy, but these two gentlemen really studied people who were thriving, the opposite of Sigmund Freud. They studied people who were doing great things in their lives, not people who had psychological problems. And what they were wanting to try to figure out is how are these people feeling accepted? How are they reaching their full potential? Okay, so they developed some theories, some treatments that really help people to feel accepted and to reach their full potential, to do awesome things. All right, so that's humanist, Abraham Maslow and Carl Rogers. All right, so now let's come up with a definition of psychology. So we have Wundt's and Tintinger's definition. It's the science of mental life. All right, but this was around 1900. So then you throw in our behavioralists, Watson and Skinner, and they're going to come up with the new definition in the 1920s, the scientific study of observable behavior. But what about our humanist? Okay, what about our humanist? What about our Freud? These cognitive psychologists, all right, so we're talking about cognitive psychologists, they studied the internal mental process, which is helped by neuroscience. You put it all together, we have cognitive psychologist, we have humanism, we have behavioralism, we have Wundt and Tintinger, and we throw it all together, put it all together, and what do we got? The new definition of psychology, which is the science of behavior and mental processes. All right, so the definition of psychology we are going to use in this class is the science of behavior and mental processes. All right, and to end this video, hopefully this will work. Maybe not. Gonna work? Here we go.